Yay!
Okay, yay.
Yay.
So today we have Stephen.
That's Stephen.
55a. So we just ended this sentence. Having discussed some differences between the two versions of the Ten Commandments, the Gemara now discusses a related matter. Rabbi Hanina ben Agil asked Rabbi Chia ben Bar Abba, for what reason is the word good not stated in the first version of the Ten Commandments, whereas in the latter version of the Ten Commandments, in the context of the mitzvah to honor one's parents, the word good is stated there in order that it shall be good for you. Rabbi Chia bar Abba said to him, before you ask me why the word good is stated, ask me if the word good is actually stated there or not.
What?
Since I am not sufficiently proficient in my knowledge of the biblical verses to remember the precise wording. Okay.
Wait, that's actually really sweet that he admits.
They didn't
Like,
have a
I don't
Torah
know.
to go grab. I do not know if the word good is stated there or not. Go to Rabbi Tahum bar Hanilai, who was commonly found at the academy of Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi, who was an expert in Agadah. Perhaps he heard.
That's like storytelling.
Okay, perhaps he heard something from him on this matter and can answer your question.
Wow,
Great.
what a cute
Good.
thing. So Rabbi Hanina ben Agil went to him. I can't see because I'm not wearing my glasses, so I'm squinting. Sorry. And asked him, Rabbi Tachnun said to him, I did not hear anything on this matter from Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi himself, but this is what Shmuel ben Bar Nahum, the brother of the mother of Rav Acha, son of Rabbi Hanina, said to me. And some say it was the father of the mother of Rav Achai, son of Rabbi Hanina. It does not mention the word good in the first tablets, since they were ultimately destined to be broken after the Jews made the golden calf.
Oh,
That's cool.
okay. Yeah, I'll read the next one. The Gemara asks, and even if it had mentioned the term good, and they were ultimately destined to break, what of it? Rav Ashi said, if this term had been mentioned in the first tablet, all good would have, God forbid, ceased from Israel once they were broken.
Oh my gosh.
Therefore,
That's so
only the
dramatic.
second version, which was written after the breaking of the tablets, contains the word good, so that there would always be good for the Jewish people.
Wow, I'm just gonna leave
That's
it like this
cool.
instead of moving it around.
Yeah, that's
really
fine.
dramatic.
That is really dramatic.
Rabbi Yehoshua says, if one sees the letter tet in his dream, it is a good sign for him.
Yeah.
The Gemara asks, what is the reason? If we say that it is because the word good
Tov.
is written in the Torah and begins with the letter tet, then one could say instead that it is an allusion to the verse, and I will sweep it with the broom, vetetetiha bemateate, of destruction.
Oh no.
The broom of destruction, which also contains the letter tet several times,
Clearly.
but is referring to punishment. The Gemara answers, we mean that when someone sees one tet in his dream, it is a good sign, but this latter verse contains several.
Uh-oh, if there are too many tets.
Don't dream too many tets.
If you have too many tets. Do you know what I also... Okay, somewhere in the Talmud, I don't know where it says it, but somewhere in the Talmud, it talks about the idea that the person who interprets the dream is actually at fault for bad things that happen in the dream.
Really?
Yeah, I
What
don't
if you
remember
interpret
where
it
it is.
yourself?
Well, if you interpret it yourself, then you're badly, then you're the reason that bad things happen.
So the interpretation means more than the actual
interpreter
dream.
means more than the dream. So the interpreter means more than the interpretation of the dream.
Well, Joseph had a bunch of bad things to say about the baker. Or, wait, I
Yes.
think it was the baker.
But remember, he didn't interpret the dreams. God interpreted the dreams
Okay.
through him.
Okay.
This is
That's
a
true.
really big
Okay,
deal.
true.
Okay.
We have to say it, or
Yeah.
one of my co-teachers is going to
Yeah.
get very mad at me.
That's true.
All right, the Gemara asks, this latter statement is problematic, as according to the explanation, one can say that a single letter, tet, alludes to the verse, her filthiness, tumata, is in her skirts. This is not a win for the woman. Which begins with the letter tet. The Gemara answers, we mean that when one sees the letter tet together with the letter chet, bet. Wow, I can read. Bet in this dream, it is a good sign. That's because it's tov. As the word tov is written with both. The Gemara asks further, according to this, say that it alludes to the verse, her gates are sunk, taveu, into the ground, in Lamentations, which begins with the letter tet, followed by the letter bet.
But that's not a good thing to be sunk in the ground.
Exactly, they're saying so having a tet and a vet could still be bad. That's what
Okay.
they're saying.
Rather, it is not merely because it is the first letter of the word good, tov, that is considered a good omen, since the Torah initially introduces the letter tet in the context of good with the word good, tov, itself is a good omen. As from the word Bereshit,
Breshit.
Bereshit, The first word in the Torah until the verse, and God saw the light was good, tov, Genesis. The letter tet is not written anywhere.
Ooh.
Okay, so we're not sure. Well, they're trying to say, yes, it is good. And Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi says, if one sees a eulogy, hesped, in his dream, sees a eulogy, like written down, like, don't you normally hear a eulogy? It is an illusion that in heaven they had pity, chasu, on him and saved him, peda'uhu, from actually being eulogized.
That's good.
The Gemara notes this statement applies specifically when he actually saw the word eulogy in writing. Eulogy.
Okay.
Don't dream about people writing eulogies.
Oh my gosh. The Mishnah teaches, and similarly, undomesticated animals and birds. Okay, backing up so you know, we've been talking about like the different categories of like harm, and one of those is pit. This is very important. The category of harm is pit. Like if a person digs a pit and an animal falls into it, this is a problem. We were talking about first whether people fall into it, but right now we're talking about whether stupid oxen fall into it or not.
And they were like, are birds included in this all animals thing?
Right. Because a donkey and an ox may refer to all animals, or it may only refer
to a donkey and an
or
ox.
to animals that can
or
get
to animals
sacrificed,
that can get sacrificed,
Got
or to
it.
animals whose firstborn is
or
declared.
animals that if you touch them they make you impure, which apparently birds never
Carcasses.
make you impure.
Got it.
Right.
Yeah,
Birds
they're dead.
don't.
Yeah.
So we're talking about birds now.
Yes,
Yeah.
this is very important. Birds are subject to the same halachot as domesticated animals.
Great.
Reish Lakish, we love Reish Lakish, says, here Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi taught in the ruling from Tosaf. I can say that word, yes. That illustrates the statement that birds and undomesticated animals are also subject to the prohibition of diverse kinds. A cock, a peacock, tavas, and a pheasant, ufasione, ufasioni, got it. Ufasione, are diverse kinds with respect to each other, since this halakha applies to birds as well.
Okay, great.
So those are diverse kinds. So they
birds
couldn't
are
plow a
included.
field together.
Got it.
This is very important. And a human can't plow a field with an ox,
'cause it's-
especially on Shabbat.
Wow,
No one's allowed
okay.
to.
No,
plow a field
on to Shabbat only. You can still plow
Can
your
an
field
ox
with an
plow a
ox.
field without a human?
Not on Shabbat.
But you can plow with your ox, but it's when it's not Shabbat.
Yeah.
But not your ox and your donkey together.
No, they're not allowed.
Okay.
It's diverse kinds.
Good to know. I'm picking up on where we left off. Okay. The Gemara asks, isn't this obvious what novelty is stated here? Rav Haviva said, the novelty here is because they are reared together.
Ooh.
Lest you say, since they are reared together, they are essentially one species and not considered diverse kinds. Therefore, it teaches us that they are actually separate species, and the halachot of diverse kinds do apply to them.
Just like cats that are raised with dogs raised with cats. They're still a cat.
It's still a cat.
Or still a dog.
Yeah.
Following the discussion of the prohibition of different kinds as it relates to birds, Shmuel says, the domestic goose and the wild goose are diverse kinds with respect to each other and are not one species.
Because they're not reared together.
Yeah.
I guess.
Rav Hanan objects to this.
Yeah.
What is this? What is the reason? If we say it is because the beak of this one is long and the beak of that one is short, if that is so, then with regard to a Persian camel and an Arabian camel, where the neck of this one is thick and the neck of that one is thin, they should indeed be considered diverse kinds with respect to one another. Clearly, though, the camels are in fact two variants of a single species.
I love
Yeah,
that
I
we're
agree with
doing
that.
science right now.
Yeah, we're doing
Yes.
so much science.
Talmud says. Rather, Abaye says that is not the reason, but rather another difference exists between the domestic goose and the wild goose concerning the male. With regard to this type, i.e. the wild goose, its testicles are visible from the outside. Are we going to get into gender?
Okay.
From the outside with regard to that one, i.e. the domestic goose, its testicles are inside. Rav Papa said that another difference exists between them concerning the female. Oh, wait a second. I don't think either of this is true about the goose in.
Well, they don't.
I was very surprised to hear this about the testicles.
Rav Papa said another difference exists between them concerning the female. This one, the wild goose, releases only one egg in its ovary and later releases another. And that one, the domestic goose, releases several eggs at once in its ovary. Consequently, they are not considered the same species.
How do they know this?
Okay, first of all, I think we need to do some research on whether a goose's testicles are visible.
I know. I can't believe that like a wild goose and a just because a domesticated goose have been living with humans.
If I do a Google search while we're studying Talmud, is that
Also,
sacrilegious?
No, you're fine. Do
Geese
it.
aren't really domestic. They're always kind of wild.
Okay,
Just
I'm
be like-
I'll read my paragraph and then we'll look it up.
And then like maybe this is just because they came on the nest and they were like, oh, there's multiple eggs in this nest. That means it lays multiple eggs at one time.
That's probably
like
what they think.
yeah. Okay, are you gonna read this one, Steven?
Yes.
Wait, he's also just looking.
I'm also looking it up, but I don't have service here, so we'll see.
Okay.
In connection with the prohibition of diverse kinds, Rabbi Yirmeiah says that Reish Lakish says, one who crossbreeds two species of creatures that live in the sea is flogged for transgressing the prohibition of crossbreeding diverse kinds. The Gemara asks, what is the reason, i.e., where is there an allusion to this in the Torah? Rav Adar bar Ahava says in the name of Ula, it is derived from the verbal analogy between the term, according to its species, Lemenehu, from Genesis, referring to animals living on dry land, and the same term according to the species, Lemenehu, Genesis, referring to the sea creatures. In the same way that the former may not be crossbred, similarly the latter may not be crossbred.
Okay.
And that makes sense.
That's an interesting. So don't breed fish together. The sage Rahava raises a dilemma with regard to one who drives a wagon on the seashore with a goat and a shibuta, a certain species of fish, together pulled by the goat on land and the fish at sea. What is the
Oh no!
Has he violated the prohibition against performing labor with diverse kinds in the same way that one does when plowing with an ox and a donkey together or not?
Steven,
These people.
did you get it? if a goat pulls a cart on land, but then later it's pulled as a boat by a fish.
No, at the same time. No, because it's pulled
Oh, at the
together.
same time.
It's like, like this.
Along the...
With a fish that somehow has deep enough water to pull and your goat still has land to walk on.
This is amazing.
The two sides of the question are as follows. Do we say that since the goat does not descend into the sea and the shibuta does not ascend onto the land, they are not working together at all, and so he has not done anything forbidden? Or perhaps since in any event he is now driving the wagon with both of them, he thereby transgresses the prohibition? Hayley?
Who's gonna look up a shibuta?
It's some kind of fish, they say.
Ravina objects to this, but if that is so, that one is liable. Then, if it is so that one is liable, then if a person joined wheat and barley together in his hand and sowed the wheat in Eretz Yisrael and the barley outside of Eretz Yisrael, where the prohibition of diverse kinds does not apply to seeds, so too should he be liable. Clearly, however, there are two distinct regions, and the seeds are not considered to be mixed together.
So you can have your goat polling and your fish polling.
Okay.
Ooh. Did you know the shibuta tastes like pork?
The fish that tastes like pork.
I have not enough
That's
service
funny
to get
because in
anywhere with
Japanese,
this
buta
Google
means
search.
pork. Just buta by itself.
The sages said in response to this objection, how can these cases be compared? There, in the case of planting diverse kinds of seeds, it is specifically Eretz Yisrael that is the location subject to this obligation, whereas outside of Eretz Yisrael is not a location subject to this obligation. Here, by contrast, in the case of the person driving a wagon, both this location, i.e. the land, and that location, i.e. the sea, are locations subject to this obligation. Consequently, if one works together two different species either on the land or in the sea, he is liable. Therefore, the question is a valid one.
But they're still separate. You still have your land and your
Yeah,
sea
that's what
goat.
they're saying. It's a
Okay,
it's a
it's a
valid
valid
Seems like
question.
much
Okay,
ado about nothing to me.
55B. Well, that's pretty much all of the Talmud.
Steven,
They bring up stuff, and they're
Are
like,
you
"What
aware?"
about-" Well, one of the things we did earlier was, what happens if my ox gores my pregnant wife and she has a miscarriage, and then who has to pay for the fetus?
but then also, was it an ox that was forewarned, a forewarned ox that had already gored somebody, or are all oxen forewarned?
And is
oxes?
her husband dead or not dead? Is he a convert or not?
And then if the ox itself was pregnant and then gored somebody, then is the fetus
an accomplice?
an accomplice?
The ox's fetus.
Good to know.
Mishnah.
I love the Talmud.
In the case of one who brought his flock of sheep into the pen, they're not going to even answer the goat one.
No.
And the goat and fish question.
We'll get to find. No, they're just
Makes
saying
me
it's a
think of
valid question.
Capricorn, which is like half fish, half goat. Isn't
That's
it?
a mixture of diverse kinds.
But in one body.
Talmudology is one of the first
Things that
sources that came up when I looked at.
Okay, in the
Goose
case of one
testicles.
who brought his flock of sheep into the pen and locked the door before it in a manner that is appropriate, and despite this, sheep went out and caused damage in another person's field by eating produce or trampling it, the owner is exempt, since he safeguarded the animals appropriately. If he did not lock the door before the sheep in a manner that is appropriate and sheep went out and caused damage, the owner is liable since his negligence led to the damage.
Good job.
Okay,
This makes sense.
fine,
Oops.
fair.
Sorry.
If the owner locked the door appropriately, but the wall of the pen was breached at night, or bandits breached it, and sheep subsequently went out and caused damage by eating or trampling, the owner of the sheep is exempt from liability. If the bandits themselves took the sheep out of the pen, and the animals subsequently caused the damage, the bandits are liable.
That makes so much sense.
Yeah.
If the owner left the animal in the sun, causing it to suffer, or if he conveyed it to a deaf, mute, an imbecile, or a minor who are not able to safeguard it, and the animal went out and caused damage, the owner is liable because he was negligent.
Good.
Okay.
Oh, it's good that the owner is.
So something you need to know, the deaf, mute, imbecile, or minor is a halakhic category of people who are incapable of being halakhically liable for
Right.
something.
Yes, I understood because
we
they're-
even
they
talked
can't-
about
yeah.
imbecile oxen.
But we were talking about the
and
imbecile
deaf-mute
ox and the
oxen.
deaf, mute oxen.
But so this is good. This is a win again for, I think, the handicapped people, even though it's weirdly put, because the owner is liable because he knows better, and the child especially doesn't. The owner conveyed the animal to a shepherd to care for it. The shepherd enters in his place and is responsible for the damage.
Makes
That is
sense.
true.
Because the shepherd, yeah.
Because the shepherd should be
Halakhically liable,
halakhically
yeah.
responsible. Yes.
If the animal fell into a garden and derives benefit from produce there, its owner pays for the benefit that it derives and not for other damage caused. Okay. If the animal descended into the garden in its usual manner and caused damage there, the owner pays for what it damaged. How does the court appraise the value of the damage when the owner pays for what it damaged? The court appraises a large piece of land with an area required for sowing 1 se'ah of seed in that field, including the garden bed in which the damage took place. This appraisal includes how much it was worth before the animal damaged it and how much it is worth now, and the owner must pay the difference. The court appraises not only the garden bed that was eaten or trampled, rather the depreciation and value of the bed as part of its running area. This is like stuff we did earlier.
Yeah.
This results in a smaller payment as the damage appears less significant in the context of a larger area.
Oh my
But it's a win for the person who has to pay.
Yes. Rav Shimon says the principle of appraisal applies only in the case where the animal ate unripe produce, but if it ate ripe produce, the owner pays the value of the ripe produce. Therefore, if it ate 1 se'ah of produce, he pays for 1 se'ah, and if it ate 2 se'ahs, he pays for 2
Makes
se'ahs.
sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
But what if it did damage still?
Gemara. The Gemara clarifies the definition of locking the door in a manner that is appropriate.
Good.
Perfect. Excited. The sages taught what is considered locking in a manner that is appropriate and what is considered locking in a manner that is not appropriate. If one locked the door such that it is able to withstand a typical wind without collapsing or opening, this is considered a manner that is appropriate, whereas if you lock the door in such that it is unable to withstand a typical wind, this is considered to be a manner that is not appropriate.
Not a hurricane. Rabbi Mani Bar Patish said, "Who is the Tana who taught with regard to animals that are forewarned that it is sufficient for the animal to provide only reduced safeguarding for the owner? Since the Mishnah deals with damage categorized as eating or trampling, for which all animals are considered forewarned, it must be in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, as we learned in a Mishnah, 45b. If the owner of an ox tied it with reins to a fence or locked the gate before it in a manner that is appropriate..." Is there an earthquake? Did you feel it?
No.
No.
It's
I
totally,
didn't.
it's totally, unless it was you doing your foot
It
on the
might
ground.
have been me doing my foot.
Okay.
Hold on. Is this it?
Yeah, that.
Yeah,
Oh.
no.
Okay, never mind. Okay. Does this bench move?
Sorry.
Yeah. If the owner of an ox tied with reins to a fence or locked the gate before it in a manner that is appropriate, but nevertheless the ox went out and caused damage, whether the animal is innocuous or forewarned, the owner is liable because this is not considered sufficient precaution to prevent damage. This is the statement of Rabbi Meir.
DeBarty. The Mishnah continues. Rabbi Yehuda says that if the ox is innocuous, the owner is liable even if he safeguarded it appropriately. Wait, why? if the ox is safeguarded appropriately, since the Torah does not limit the required safeguarding for an innocuous animal. But if the ox is forewarned, the owner is exempt from payments of damages as it is stated in the verse describing the liability for damage caused by a forewarned animal, and the owner has not secured it. And this ox was tied with reins or behind a locked gate was secured. Rabbi Eliezer says a forewarned ox has no sufficient safeguarding at all other than slaughtering it with a knife. I remember that. According to this Mishnah, only Rabbi Yehuda maintains the reduced safeguarding is sufficient to render exempt from liability the owner of an ox that is forewarned.
But so the ox is innocuous, and it was safeguarded appropriately, but the owner is now liable? That was not what Rabbi Meir said above.
Well, because you don't have to safeguard an innocuous animal.
Okay, breaking news. No birds have external testicles.
This is what I thought.
All internal.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, what are they talking about? Maybe it's some other piece on like a wattle or something. I don't know. It's something that a wild goose seems to have on its tail. Okay.
Like how they thought bald eagles were bald, but really their feathers are just white.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like they don't know what bird's skin looks like after all the chicken people have eaten over centuries. Okay, read.
Okay. The Gemara answers, you can even say the Mishnah is in accordance with an opinion of, Rabbi Meir, who holds the owner of a forewarned ox as liable, even if he provides only reduced safeguarding. Although animals are considered forewarned with regard to eating and trampling, one cannot apply to them a halacha stated with regard to an animal that is forewarned with regard to goring. Okay. The halacha is different with regard to eating and trampling, since the Torah limited the required standard of safeguarding for them. As the Amora Rav Eliezer says, and some of it was taught in a Baraita. Baraita.
It's okay.
There are 4 matters for which the Torah limited their required standard of safeguarding, and these are pit and fire, eating, and trampling.
Oh, no.
So he's been forewarned.
Oh, no.
Yes, viewers, my D&D character's named Amora. I thought that because they'll talk about the Amoraim and stuff like that. Where does the Torah limit the required standard with safeguarding with regard to the category of pit?
Yeah.
As it is written, if a man shall open a pit, or if a man shall dig a pit and not cover it, and an ox or a donkey fall therein, the owner of the pit shall pay.
Here we go.
I thought we defined everything possible for pit already.
No, we haven't talked about covering and uncovering a pit.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I feel like that should have been the first thing you talked about in regards to a pit.
Because we were talking about whether it was dug on your land or in public land, and then it was very, very confusing.
Yeah, like there seems to be no reason for you opening the pit. One can infer, but if he covered it, he is exempt from liability, even though it is possible that the pit would become uncovered in the future.
Where does the Torah limit the required standard of safeguarding with regard to the category of fire? As it is written, the one who kindled the fire shall pay compensation, which is interpreted to mean that one is exempt from liability unless he acts in a manner that is similar to actively kindling the fire on another's property by being negligent.
Okay. Where does the Torah limit the required standard of safeguarding with regard to the category of eating? As it is written, if a man causes a field or vineyard to be eaten, and he set his animal loose and it fed in the field of another, this indicates that the owner does not bear liability unless he acts in a manner that is similar to causing his animal to feed there by being negligent.
A man, he set his animal loose, and it. But he didn't control it. He didn't set it loose in the other's field. So he only has to pay if he was purposefully negligent.
He has to pay if he set it loose in a manner that is close enough that he was trying to get the animal to feed there.
Okay.
Right. If they can prove
like it
That's
could
how
have
it's
walked
limited.
far. Yeah. Where does the Torah limit? Oh, yeah. Never mind. Where does the Torah limit the required standard of safeguarding with regard to the category of trampling? As it is written, if a man causes a field or vineyard to be eaten, and he set his animal loose, v'shilach, and it fed in the field of another, this indicates the owner is not liable unless he acts in a manner that is similar to setting his animal loose. So everything is about intention. Again, we already talked about this like thousands of days ago.
And it is taught in a Baraita with regard to the term veshilach. This is referring to the damage by trampling, and similarly, the verse states, "Then send forth meshaleche, the feet of the ox and the donkey." Oh, in Isaiah. Okay. With regard to the term uvi'ir, this is referring to damage by eating, and similarly, The verse states, as one consumes with the tooth until it be all gone.
Evidently, the reason for the owner's liability is specifically that he acted in a manner that is similar to setting the animal loose or causing it to feed. One can infer, but if he did not act in such a manner, even if he provided only reduced safeguarding, he is not liable.
Even if he provided, okay. Rabbi Rabbah said, the wording of the Mishnah is also precise, as it taught the halakha specifically with regard to sheep. This raises the question, since we have been dealing with the cases involving an ox and all the previous Mishnayot, then let this Mishnah also teach the halakha with regard to an ox.
Great.
What is different in this Mishnah that it teaches in the case of a sheep?
Yeah, why?
Is it not because the Torah limited its requirements specifically with regard to the safeguarding against damage that is more likely to be caused by sheep, i.e. caused by eating and trampling, since sheep are unlikely to gore? If so, the wording of the Mishnah is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Meir, who holds that a reduced level of supervision is sufficient only with regard to eating and trampling, but not goring. That makes sense for sheep.
The Gemara rejects this. One cannot necessarily derive from the wording of the Mishnah that it is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Meir. Perhaps the Mishnah specifically uses the case of sheep to teach the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda because it would have used an example of an ox here. One might have thought that it also includes damage caused by goring, about which it is not written in the Torah that reduced supervision is sufficient. Therefore, the Mishnah specifically uses the example of sheep to indicate damage caused by eating and trampling, about which it is written that reduced supervision is sufficient. And it teaches us that only with regard to eating and trampling, for which animals are considered forewarned from the outset, is reduced supervision sufficient according to the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. The Gemara concludes that this is a valid reading of the Mishnah, and one may learn from it that the Mishnah may even be in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. So
they're just trying to define whose opinion is the best.
Yeah.
It is taught in the Bereta that Rabbi Yehoshua said, there are 4 matters in which one who commits an offense concerning them is exempt from liability according to the human laws, but liable according to the laws of heaven. And it would be proper for him to pay the compensation, and the cases are as follows. One who breaches a fence that stood before another's animal, thereby allowing an animal to escape, and one who bends another's standing grain before a fire so that it catches fire. And one who hires false witnesses to testify. And one who knows testimony in support of another but does not testify on his behalf.
That's like an innocent bystander who's not innocent.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The Gemara clarifies each of the cases listed in the Baraita. The master says, with regard to the case of one who breaches a fence that stood before another's animal, what are the circumstances? If we say it is speaking of a stable wall that would not have fallen by itself, the one who breached it should also be liable according to human laws, at least for the damage caused to the wall. Rather, here...
we will find out next time.
Oh my goodness.
We say goodbye. Thank you for studying with us.
Goodbye.
Bye.